Hello, I'm Chris Newman from Indirect Democracy New Zealand, and this presentation is about democracy in New Zealand and how it could improve for us all. Under the present system, we are experiencing increasing debt, decreasing cohesion in the community, increasing influence by foreign concerns, and loss of citizens' power, loss of citizens' control of our own government. And yet we vote for every 3 years for a government which we elect. What could be possibly going wrong? How is it that the political parties and the elected representatives are having so much difficulty in representing our interests and in taking care of the nation on our behalf? There is a bureaucracy, there are elected politicians, there is an existing tradition, and these things don't seem to be working in our favour. We are losing ground. It seems that the average person is worse off than we were 20 years ago, worse off than we were 10 years ago, and so on. How can this situation be addressed, understood, and turned around? Well, first we need to clearly understand our present circumstance, which is what we call indirect democracy, and it's a bit like a petty dictatorship, because every 3 years we get to vote for the political parties, and we definitely don't get the government we vote for, and neither do we get the government we don't vote for because under MMP we end up with coalition governments which are very different in composition and in policy from the parties that we actually vote for on the election day. And this means that the political parties don't have to honour their promises or keep to their agreements with us, because they make agreements among themselves. So their first duty is to look after their own interests, and then to maintain their coalition, and then to look after the vested interests and the lobbyists, and then look after the international treaties and agreements, and then fourth or fifth or sixth comes we the people. This helps explain something of the circumstance that is present New Zealand politics. So right now I'm going to show you two diagrams. One is about indirect democracy and the other is about direct democracy, and we'll contrast the two and see how can we improve the current situation. I'll just bring the diagram across. Now here we have the, there you go, you can see that, the indirect democracy situation. The current system allows us to vote one election every 3 years, one day, just on one day, and that's just a vote for for the political parties which form the two sides of the government, the government itself and the opposition, and together they're called our parliament. And there can be left and right wing type tendencies in the government. The political parties are in a conflict situation because the opposition is meant to groan and mumble about the sitting government. So in effect, because the sitting government has the power, the opposition is not doing anything particularly helpful for us all. The activities of the sitting government and the opposition are reported to us by the media. So after we get to elect these characters and these political parties, the media tell us what they want us to hear about the story. So we the people are on the outside trying to look in and understand what's going on. It gets worse. The business lobby with their money is able to influence government more than we can, as do the international and globalist interests such as the United Nations, the Chinese Communist Party, Bill Gates, various other organisations with great globalist resources push onto our government through treaties, pacts, agreements, the free trade agreement with the Chinese Communist Party, for example, and that influences government policy towards us. This is the reverse of the way it's meant to work. We the people are meant to direct things. So under indirect democracy we get the worst end of it. And we don't even get to influence our government because there's an invisible wall between us and the government, a wall of laws and regulations and ways of doing business and established interest. Let's look at the direct democracy model as it contrasts with the indirect democracy model. And I've got that on the other part of the board, which we'll just show you now. So if we bring this down into focus, here we go. I'll just bring that up a little bit more. That's it. So we can contrast the two. There we go. The direct democracy model involves the people and the political parties in the parliament process. All the political parties, once they cross the threshold, get to form the government. The people, we the people, are the opposition to government. The tools of direct democracy unite us both. So through the tools of direct democracy we are able to guide the government, and the government is able to communicate with we the people. And under this system, per year there will be 4 referenda, as they have in Switzerland, and the referenda give the communication from the people to the government, and also it can work from the government to the people, to keep the ship of state on course, to keep the priorities organised, and to keep the nations moving forward with the best interests at all times. In this system, the business lobby is on the outside with their influential money, and the internationalists, the globalists, the United Nations, the Chinese Communist Party, these other outfits are also on the outside. They cannot get into the mechanism of government and direct it in their own way, because we, the people, have control at all times, like an accelerator and a brake. The tools of direct democracy help us to run our own government. Not only that, the media are now involved in reporting what's happening rather than being in collusion with the government telling us propaganda. When you see this system, which operates successfully in Switzerland, and the indirect democracy which we've got in New Zealand, which would you rather have? Which would be the better for our people, for our way of life? It looks clearly that the direct democracy gives people power. We the people own our parliament. We the people direct the agenda. Under indirect democracy, the political parties override us, do what they want behind closed doors. We have no way of getting involved at any time except for one day every 3 years when we have to choose what they want us to choose. Which, if you were voting for a government, as New Zealanders are approaching an election right now, which one would you vote for? The parties which support indirect democracy or the parties which support direct democracy? Clearly, the indirect democracy is a wasted vote. Voting for these parties, you'll never get what you want. You'll get what you don't want every time, and have no control during the 3 years between elections, and even on election day we got no control. Under direct democracy we have control over everything because we are directly engaged in the process. Many of the smaller parties are involved in New Zealand with policies which support direct democracy. National, Labour, the Greens, and New Zealand First and ACT are all involved with indirect democracy, and that is the problem. But under our existing system we can move from indirect democracy to direct democracy through the means of referendum. A binding referendum that is binding on the government would bring through direct democracy as a way of running our parliament. We the people can do that, we have that power, and the minor parties stand for that. The purpose of this discussion is to open up the topic and to bring to you the basic points of direct democracy, indirect democracy, which will be developed in further presentations. This is Chris Newman from Direct Democracy, New Zealand. Thank you.